You truly loved her. You were always there when she needed you. You were kind, patient, a good listener. You did nothing wrong. And then one day she left. No fights, no accusations, just no longer interested. She pulled away quietly, as if whatever love once held you two together no longer had the strength to keep her from slipping through your fingers. You didn't understand. You loved her with all your heart. You did nothing wrong. But the problem wasn't in what you did. It was in what you lost. You lost your boundaries. You lost the ability to make her stay sharp, to make her pause and think twice before crossing a line, to make her respect you, to make her adjust how she acted when standing in front of you. Women don't walk away because you didn't love them enough. They walk away because even while you kept loving, you stopped being someone they looked up to. And the reason they turned their back isn't that you were cruel, but that you were too soft with yourself. You stayed quiet when you should have spoken up. You kept tolerating things you shouldn't. You tried to hold on to someone who was already backing away because she no longer saw you as someone strong enough to walk beside. Respect is not something you beg for. It's something that makes people instinctively adjust themselves around you, not through your words, but through your presence. By the way, you walk into a room and people know this is someone you don't play with. This article is not about regaining power. It's not about controlling anyone. It's about reclaiming the strength you lost after loving the wrong way too many times. And here they are. 5 boundaries that will not only make women respect you, but help you respect yourself again. Boundary 1, stop giving when respect no longer exists. There's a kind of weariness most men don't know how to name. It's that quiet exhaustion of trying every single day to keep a relationship alive, even when deep inside, you already sense that the respect you once had is fading. You still text her, you still check in, you still care, but everything feels like watering a tree that's already died, not because love is gone, but because respect has quietly left the room. This is the truth many men avoid facing. They think, if I'm just a little more patient, if I'm just a little kinder, if I give a little more, she'll see, she'll come around. My sincerity will be returned. But what they don't realize is that continuing to give in silence while being quietly dismissed is the fastest way to lose yourself. Because respect isn't in the words, I love you. It's in the way she listens to you, in the way she doesn't hurt you when she's angry, in the way she doesn't look down on you in front of others. When those things disappear, the words of love mean nothing. And if you keep staying, keep giving, what you're really saying is, you can hurt me and I'll stay. You can look down on me and I'll still love you. No one truly respects a man who doesn't know how to protect himself. They might use you. They might pity you. They might even keep you close out of habit. But admiration, that's gone. And when admiration disappears, love begins to dry up, not loudly, but quietly, like a river whose source has been cut off. So the first boundary, and maybe the most important, is knowing when to stop. Not stop loving, but stop doing everything just to keep something. That's no longer healthy. Stop texting first every morning. Stop forcing yourself to avoid upsetting her. Stop apologizing for things you didn't do. Stop showing up every time she's sad, only to be forgotten when she's fine. You don't have to argue. You don't need to raise your voice. You just need to pull your presence back. Gently, but clearly. That's how you say to her, I'm not the man who stays while being hurt. I'm not here to prove I deserve love. I'm here because I have value. And if you no longer see that, then I will be the one to walk away first. It may sound cold, but really it's the highest form of kindness you can give yourself. Because you deserve a relationship where your kindness is appreciated, not treated as something expected. And if she truly has feelings for you, that silence will speak louder than any words. Maybe after a few days, maybe after a few weeks. But if there's something worth keeping, she'll come back. With a different attitude, with more honesty, with a greater sense of maturity. And if she doesn't, at least you didn't lose yourself loving the wrong way. You don't need to stay to prove how deeply you love. You need to leave to prove that even deep love has a boundary, and that boundary is called self-respect. A man who knows how to love is patient, but a man who knows how to love well knows when to stop loving something that's no longer treated as it should be. This is the first boundary and the foundation for all the others. Stop giving the moment you feel you're no longer being respected. Boundary 2, protect your inner stillness from the storms outside. There's a type of man women never forget. Not because he's charming, not because he's wildly successful, not because he tries to stand out, but because when you're near him, everything slows down. No rush, no noise, no chaos. He carries something rare, stillness. A stillness that's not about retreat or withdrawal, but a peace that radiates from his gaze, his breath, his refusal to be dragged into meaningless noise. And that stillness, it's not a gift from fate. It's the result of a decision, the decision not to let others steer his emotions, not to let the chaos of the world invade the quiet within. It's not some lofty philosophy. It's survival, because a man without inner peace is always being pulled by a cold message, by a vague comment, by a nameless anger from a half-hearted relationship. He's not really living. He's reacting to things that don't even belong to him. We don't recognize it early on. We call constant distraction being cared about. We call replying instantly being nice. We think being always available is how we hold on to a relationship. But the more available we become, the more we're taken for granted, because no one values a man whose time, energy, and focus can be taken so easily, as if he has nothing more important to do with his life. Women won't say this out loud, but they feel it instantly. They sense it when you drop what you're doing to reply, when you change plans just because she's feeling low, when you show up whenever she needs you, but vanish when you need yourself. At first, she may find it sweet, but over time, she starts to feel uneasy, like you have no life of your own, like there's no world of yours for her to step into. And if there's nothing you stand on, there's nothing to hold her close. Stillness isn't something to display. It's a way of living. It's when you read without showing it off, when you train your body without needing applause, when you choose silence over chasing noise. And in that stillness, you begin to become a different man, a man who doesn't react too quickly, a man who doesn't get caught in every argument, a man who doesn't explain himself to be understood. He knows what deserves his energy and what doesn't. This boundary begins with a simple question. Is this thing worth disturbing my peace for? Every time you feel pulled into a fight, ask that. Every time you're about to pour out a long message to someone who won't even reply, ask that. And if the answer is no, then stop. No need to get angry. No need to make announcements. Just stop, quietly but firmly. You'll start to realize no one can shake your peace unless you allow it. And when you stop allowing it, you'll become someone different. Your eyes will hold more depth. Your voice will carry more weight. And your presence, even in silence, will make people pause, not because you demand it, but because they feel it. This is a man who can't be pushed around. He won't be swayed. He won't be poked for a reaction. Stillness is a slow-burning fire, and men who carry it rarely need to argue to earn respect. They just show up, and people adjust. So if you're tired of chasing someone else's moods, if you feel yourself getting pulled into every little drama, maybe it's time to draw a line, a boundary that protects your precious stillness within. And one day, while others are still tossed around by the wind, you'll be sitting there, calm, quiet, unmoved, and you'll know that stillness was what saved you from everything that used to throw your life into chaos. Boundary 3. Always keep a part of yourself to yourself. One of the most common mistakes men make in love is believing that sharing everything will make her stay. That if you open up your entire world to her, every thought, every old wound, every failure, every insecurity, she'll love you more, understand you better, and never want to leave. But the truth is just the opposite. When you open up too soon, too fully, you don't make her feel closer, you make her feel heavy. Women don't fall in love with a man because he lays out his whole life story. They fall for a man whose inner world they can enter bit by bit. They love the feeling of discovery, not the feeling of being handed a complete file to read on their own. They're drawn to strength, not long drawn-out confessions. And, more than anything, they love a man mature enough to keep a part of himself private, a sacred space no one gets full access to. You might think that's dishonest, that it's closed off, that it's cold, but it's not. This isn't a game. It's not about playing hard to get. It's about self-preservation. It's clarity. After all the times you opened up and were judged, hurt, or quietly dismissed, you've been there. You spoke of your fears and saw her expression shift. You shared a deep wound and later heard it thrown back at you in an argument. You poured out too much and felt empty afterward. Like you had nothing left just for yourself. You're not weak for sharing, but you've learned this. True empathy doesn't come from oversharing. It comes from the way someone listens without judgment. And not everyone is deep enough to do that. The boundary here isn't about hiding. It's about not needing to explain everything. Some things don't need to be said, as long as your actions are clear. Some emotions don't need to be spoken, as long as you know you've made it through. You are not a project that needs fixing. You don't need someone to heal you. You're building your own strength. And true strength is when you carry your scars without using them to ask for pity. As you grow older, you'll realize you speak less, not because you have nothing to say, but because you've learned to treasure silence, to treasure your own space, to treasure the feeling of knowing who you are, without needing someone else to fully understand you, just to feel whole. And that's when you become magnetic, because nothing draws people in. Like a man who is just private enough, just deep enough, to make others want to come closer, but never dare to treat him lightly. You don't need to tell her about every night you cried yourself to sleep. You don't need to explain why you tread carefully around love. You just need to carry yourself with steadiness, so she can see that you've lived through a lot. And yet here you are still standing tall. You're not running from emotion. You're learning to choose the right time, the right person, and the right way to express it. Not everyone deserves a pass into your inner world. And if everyone can walk in, then there's nothing left that's truly worth keeping. Keep a part of yourself, so she has something to wonder about. So love doesn't become too exposed, too dull, so you don't dissolve into someone else's emotions, but still stand firm in your own center. That center is what holds you upright when everything else falls apart. A man isn't attractive because he tells great stories. He's attractive because there's something he doesn't say. Yet people can feel it, his depth, his self-control, his silence full of life beneath the surface. If you want to be respected by the woman beside you, start there. Don't let her see all of you in the first few meetings. Let each conversation be a small revelation. Let every moment with you be a doorway into a depth she hasn't seen in anyone else. And remember, the man who keeps a part of himself is always the man they want to stay with longer. Boundary 4. Don't let other people's emotions steer your life. There are days when you wake up and everything feels fine, but all it takes is one offhand comment, one cold look, one unexpected reaction from someone, and suddenly you feel yourself sinking. Your mood plummets. You're no longer yourself. Your entire day starts revolving around how someone texts you, what they didn't say, or the meaning behind a vague gesture. And the worst part, you think this is normal. You think this is love caring that deeply. You think being a good man means being this sensitive. But the truth is, no one has the right to control your inner world unless you hand them the keys. And in many cases, you're the one who gives them the wheel. You let someone steer your emotions with a facial expression, a rejection, or worse, silence. You call it love. But love isn't supposed to feel like a game where you're always on the back foot. A woman may love you, but instinctively, she'll test you, not to hurt you, but to see the core of the man she's with. And if every time she nudges the wheel just a little, you lose control, you overreact, you scramble to fix things even when nothing is truly broken, then she'll know you're not the man she can rely on. This world is already good at throwing emotional punches. You can't change that, but you can choose how you respond. And the difference between a grown man and a boy in a man's body lies in how you stay grounded when storms rise. Whether it's at work, at home, or in love, don't rush to react when provoked. Don't rush to explain when misunderstood. Don't panic just because the woman you love seems a little quieter than usual today. Silence can also be a response. Calmness can also be an answer. And sometimes, your stillness is exactly what makes others reflect on themselves. The danger isn't in feeling anger, but in letting anger decide your next move. It's not in feeling sadness, but in letting sadness destroy everything you're trying to build. Emotions aren't the enemy, but if you don't learn to observe them, you'll become a victim of your own heart. Holding on to your power of choice is the ultimate boundary. You can't lead a business. You can't guide a family. You can't protect the woman you love if you can't protect your own mind from everyday emotional noise. And no, this isn't about logic overpowering emotion. It's about learning to give your emotions a seat at the table, but not letting them drive the car. You can be sad and still steady. You can hurt and still hold your posture. You can be wounded and still walk with self-respect intact. Because if every time someone grows distant, you start begging for their attention. If every time you're misunderstood, you fire off long texts trying to explain. If every time you're rejected, you scramble to prove your worth, then you've become someone who reacts instead of someone who chooses. And women, they won't say it, but they will start pulling back their admiration. Not because you're weak, but because you're no longer dependable. A man who doesn't have command over his own emotions cannot be a safe place for anyone else. You want others to respect you. Then start by respecting your own feelings. Watch them. Don't fear them. But don't hand them the steering wheel either. Respond, don't react. Choose, don't collapse. And when you do, you'll feel yourself shift. You'll speak less. You'll no longer need to prove anything. You'll know what matters and what doesn't. People will pause before trying to manipulate your mood. And the woman who once tested you will begin to look at you differently, with a hint of respect, a touch of curiosity, and a deep sense of admiration. Not because you're the toughest man in the room, but because you've stopped letting others define who you are. And that is when you truly become a man. Not the kind who has to raise his voice to be heard, but the kind who simply exists, and the world straightens up in his presence. Boundary 5, be willing to walk away when necessary. A truly mature man is not defined by what he clings to, but by what he's willing to let go of. Not because he's cold, indifferent, or arrogant, but because he understands nothing, no person, no situation is worth losing yourself for. Men often stay too long in what's already empty, just because they're afraid of being alone. They stay in a relationship where the love has faded, in a job that has drained all passion, in friendships that are nothing but habit. They tell themselves, maybe it'll get better. They repeat, she's not bad, she's just stressed lately. And they hold on to things that should have been released, because they think leaving means failure. But the truth is, staying when there's nothing left to stay for is the greatest failure of all. Women may not say it aloud, but they always know when a man is staying just because he's scared of losing them. And when she senses that you need her more than you need yourself, respect begins to collapse. She starts testing your boundaries. She pulls away just to see if you'll still hold your ground. She goes silent just to see if you'll crumble or stay firm. And if every move you make is driven by the fear of losing her, then little by little, you stop being the man she could actually walk beside. What makes a woman reconsider her behavior isn't you begging. It's when you rise with calm clarity and leave the moment your boundary has been crossed. No shouting, no threats, just action, quiet and firm. That single moment, when you choose your self-worth over a fleeting emotion, reshapes the way people see you forever. The willingness to walk away is not a statement. It's not saying, if you don't change, I'm leaving. It's a state of being. It's the inner peace of a man who knows his value and knows that real love never demands he betray himself. Someone once said, my peace matters more than being loved. It may sound cold, but if you've ever been in a relationship where you constantly had to guess what she meant, constantly had to mold yourself to fit, constantly had to give up parts of your truth just to be accepted, then you'll understand. Peace is more precious than any sweet word, and to keep that peace, you have to be willing to walk. Walk away from conversations that only blame you. Walk away from someone who keeps poking your dignity. Walk away from places where you always have to prove you're enough to be loved. Walk away, not because you stopped loving, but because you finally started loving yourself more. A man who's capable of leaving is a man others fight to keep, through sincerity, not control. He's the kind of man who makes a woman ask herself, how am I treating him? And when he does walk away, he leaves behind a silence, not because he's angry, but because he chose the right moment to protect himself. So look at your life. What are you holding on to? Just because you're afraid to lose it, not because it still holds meaning. Is there someone you're still with? Not out of joy, but out of habit. Is there something you're enduring just because you don't yet have the courage to leave? You don't have to be cold, detached, or uncaring, but you must become the kind of man who knows, this is my line. If it's crossed, I don't negotiate. I don't wait to be asked to leave. I walk because I owe myself a life that's not lived under quiet disrespect. The strongest man isn't the one who holds on to everything. He's the one who knows when to let go. And when you have the courage to turn your back on what no longer deserves you, you lose nothing. You're just making space for something better to enter. The willingness to walk away is the final boundary, but it's also the foundation of all the others. Because if you can't walk away, you'll always be held back by the average. And if you're always held back, you'll never have room for what could truly help you rise. Conclusion: when you no longer need respect because you embody it. There was a time when you believed that to be loved, you had to do more, be more patient than others, be kinder, more giving, more tolerant. You thought that if you were good enough, attentive enough, sacrificed enough, the world would eventually repay you with appreciation. But over time, you learned the price of constantly trying to be loved is losing pieces of who you really are. And eventually, you no longer want love that costs you yourself. You no longer want to be the nice guy no one notices. You no longer want to be endlessly available, easily swayed, tossed around by the emotions of others. Like a boat without a rudder, you start staying silent at the right moments. You learn to say no when it matters. You know when to step back. When you're being taken for granted, you protect the sacred private corners of yourself. You stand still in the storm, not because you don't care, but because you've learned to lead from within. You no longer need compliments to feel valuable. You don't need attention to feel real. You don't need someone else's love to feel worthy of life, because you've built your value through boundaries, through choosing what enters your life and what you will never again tolerate. From that moment on, you stop seeking respect. You become it. A man who walks into a room and doesn't need to speak loudly, but still causes others to adjust how they stand, how they speak, how they look at him. Not because you're intimidating, but because you're not easy. You don't bend, you don't react, and you don't stay where your presence isn't honored. True respect never comes from demands. It comes from living firmly and quietly, according to what you believe has value. And when you live that way, without fanfare or compromise, the world begins to shift around you, little by little, to meet the man you've become. If this message helped you see yourself more clearly, don't forget to subscribe to Light of Wise Elders. Here you'll always find calm, clear guidance, meant for men who've lived, loved, and learned, not to turn you into someone ideal, but to help you return to being the man you yourself can respect.